All righty, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to the webinar we have lovingly called A Strategy Story in 3 parts. Our plan for today is to highlight Aubrey's amazing experience for the first half of our time together, and then reserve the remaining time for a conversation, keeping it very interactive today. Let's start with the introductions. So I am, if you could switch a slide, I'm Kate, the Vice President of Client Engagement at Turnkey. I've served nonprofit clients in a variety of roles since 2014. I've advised clients like the Arthritis Foundation, March of Dimes, and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and many more on fundraising operations. And I also oversaw fundraising communications, Marcom calendars for over 1,000 individual fundraising events at one time. My particular passion includes bringing people together, which is partly why we're here today. And bringing new technology as well and products and services to the social good market to serve the needs that we see happening on the ground. Currently in my role, I specialize in pairing nonprofit professionals with the best contact for their needs, be it each other in the industry through peer group facilitation or in a consultant effort such as the one we're discussing today. Our esteemed guest today, Aubrey, has 15 years of experience fundraising for national nonprofits. She's worked on special events at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis and for the ALS Association's National Peer-to-Peer Walk program. Aubrey has been with the Lung Cancer Research Foundation for the last 5 years, where she's now a member of their senior team. She partners with department leaders and volunteer leadership to create organizational strategies and plans. And she will get into what she means by that. She really lives that day to day. She'll get into that detail. We also have DJ Hampton. He's a turnkey lead strategist with us. He's held critical leadership roles at some of the largest US nonprofits, bringing his forward-thinking style to each role. He's worked extensively in the United Way network, personally developing over $50 million in planned gifts. He's led teams supporting over $1.2 billion in annual individual giving and helped launch over $1 billion in initiative and endowment campaigns. At the ALS Association, he led development and was on track to double system-wide revenue following the Ice Bucket Challenge. He also served as the Senior VP of Market Leadership and Chief Development Officer for March of Dimes, responsible for transforming the organization, growing $130 million in annual revenue and leading over 300 staff. He earned a master's in nonprofit management from Alfred University and a JD from the David A. Clark School of Law. He's a member of the DC Bar. So if he gets a little nerdy on his wording today, please don't be shocked. You got 2 people today who are what we call at Turnkey, scarred from the neck down. And I can't wait for you to get to know them a little bit better on the process that they went through together and the amazing things that LCRF is going to be doing very, very soon. So with that, DJ, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Kate. Appreciate the intro. And so I'm very excited to be sharing a bit with you here today and really helping Aubrey tell her story. You know, it boils down to the slide you see here. There's an old Japanese proverb that vision without action is a daydream and action without vision is a nightmare. And what we're trying to do through strategic planning is really make sure that a vision becomes a reality so that we aren't making action that's unplanned. And at the same time, the vision unites us and moves us forward in a way that's different down the road than it is today. And so today we're going to share with you a strategy story. And so put on your best theater voice or your Nightline, Dateline, NBC voice. First, Act 1, a tale of merger. Next, we're going to talk about Act 2. We need a plan to get where we want to go. And then the third act that we're going to be talking about is how we're really setting up and planning for tomorrow. And with that, this story is really about Lung Cancer Research Foundation over the past 21 years, and particularly where they are today. Aubrey, would you mind telling us what is Lung Cancer Research Foundation and why do you matter?
Yeah, thanks, DJ. Well, research is right in our middle name, and that is definitely what the Lung Cancer Research Foundation cares about most. Our mission is to improve lung cancer outcomes by funding research for the prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and ultimately the cure of lung cancer. And our larger vision is to, live in a world free of lung cancer. So, I think that we believe as an organization, we believe as an organization mission, that it is research that is what helps patients most. So unlike some of our sister organizations, our patient advocacy and patient programming is not at the forefront of our mission, although it is an important piece of it. We think that it is research that will help to not only treat patients so that they can live better lives, but help to increase survival. Research is best for patients.
Thanks, Aubrey. For those of you who don't know, they're doing amazing work. And if we want to understand Lung Cancer Research Foundation today, we got to kind of look back to their founding. And what's interesting is that lung cancer research groups are relatively young. Essentially, a number of nonprofits started proliferating in the early 2000s. So these were people who were affected by lung cancer directly. Many of them had lost a loved one too soon to lung cancer and wanted to take some proactive action and bring a community together. And over the next decade, those organizations competed and many began merging. And many of the boards wanted to make a larger impact, which required a larger footprint, and which means more money to be able to do the mission, which is something mergers can often help achieve. And if we look back, Lung Cancer Research Foundation today is shaped by those two mergers with competitors in 2015 and again in 2017. The groups Lung Cancer Research Fund merged with were each group formed out of other mergers. And so you have this history of merger upon merger upon merger, culminating in a few standing groups in the space. And the merger had some great upside. The new combined organization had more ways to engage individuals and fund more research. Unfortunately, it also caused some unforeseen challenges. Many details of how a merger could be maximized were not thought through. Some of the planned benefits of the mergers did not materialize as they originally thought. And so the new organization has a lot of strengths to build on, but really didn't have a plan to unlock that potential. Aubrey, what did you add, correct, and what did I miss in there?
Yeah, so, I think ultimately what we were trying to achieve through each of the mergers was we wanted to continue to grow. We wanted to continue to invest more dollars in research. And that didn't really materialize as planned. And I think, as we were kind of in 2020, 2021, really trying to think about how can we successfully move forward. And at the same time, some of our largest, most dedicated volunteers and leaders, some of our founders actually were really ready to take a step back. They'd been raising tens of millions of dollars for lung cancer research over time. And I think we're ready to allow someone else to kind of take the reins. And really, I think they wanted to be able to step back with some confidence that they could do so. And the organization and their investments over the last decade or more would continue on, and we would continue to invest dollars in that really great research, and the mission would continue to move forward. It created some conflict. How do we do this? What is it that we are going to do as an organization to continue to maintain this legacy and these investments in research dollars to improve outcomes? And, there were some opposing views on how to go about doing this. There were some people who thought, we need to continue to merge, we need more access to more people, and bigger is better, and that is how we will continue to move forward. There were others that were saying, well, maybe we need to engage in more patient services. Maybe we need to offer more support and attract more so then we can still, control the dollars and invest those dollars in research. And, there was a lot of back and forth. How do we do this? And I think if you asked any one person, there was always a different opinion. And, as a staff member, we didn't have a lot of direction in terms of where we were headed. And so, the senior team really thought it was important to not just create vision and alignment amongst ourselves, but among all of our volunteer leaders, and particularly with the board of directors, kind of co-creating that vision and gaining buy-in so that everyone was on board with what is our next best step forward, was a real challenge, and one that we decided, we got to come up with a plan that addresses all of these concerns, that allows the volunteers to take a step back and really have some confidence in the direction that we're headed, and the ultimate goal to fund more research.
And so when Turnkey first met with Aubrey and the team in November of 2022, they were having an existential crisis, essentially. How do you struggle with those previous three problems and move forward in a way that's going to attract more donors, more revenue, more partners, more funding, more advocacy, more laws, all those pieces? And they indicated they needed a plan on who they were, where they were going to be in 5 years, And at the end of the day, how the hell do we get there? Knowing there's this diverse sets of opinions and thoughts and direction, and not any one governing North Star. Aubrey, what would you add to help set the stage for Act 3, which is what you did?
Yeah, so these are the questions we were sitting with. These are big questions. DJ said existential crisis. That's what it felt like. And I think even as a staff, we would answer these questions very differently. And so, I think we felt that it was really important that we could get clear and hear what everyone had to say and thought about the answers to these questions. We really wanted to listen and hear, what is it that everyone else thinks? Let's take all of the perspectives into account, all of the potential options, and really weigh them out. And I think, we recognized pretty early on that it was going to be really difficult for us as staff to do that, and allow our volunteers to be open and comfortable. And part of the reason we decided to bring Turnkey in to help facilitate this was so that we could really lay it all out on the table and allow kind of an impartial party to step us through these hoops, and then everyone's opinion could be heard and voiced rather equally.
What Aubrey's nicely leaving out is there were some really excited conversations. People were very passionate. You had these volunteers who poured their heart and soul into the organizations over years. They really wanted to see some big things. At the same time, the organization needed to go through that process that Aubrey was talking about. And so from January of 2021 to July of 2021, Lung Cancer Research Foundation and Turnkey partnered on the strategic plan task force work. They pulled a group of caring volunteers, some who were in the tent on the vision, some who were very skeptical, and they brought them together to essentially lay all their visions out, all their thoughts, identify through data and discussions and qualitative surveys and a few other things, what's the best path forward to create a strategic plan, and then worked together to bring that to the bigger board and get that approved. And that was a large effort. Aubrey could probably tell you over drinks or right now in a few minutes, the number of conversations that were happening behind the scenes, both with staff and volunteers and volunteer to volunteer. And what I really admired was the staff was partnered with the volunteers every step of the way. And it was really amazing to watch. They focused on significantly expanding the research program. And there was a lot of discussions around patient advocacy, on care services, on education. And they narrowed that down because they believe that's where the biggest bang for the buck of the limited dollars that they had could be done to fuel that work. And they also knew that rapid growth was going to happen by adding zeros onto donations, and having a really compelling research vision and a plan was going to be the fastest way for individuals and companies to get more money to support that vision. And once the strategic plan was approved, starting in July, we partnered again with LCRF, and they launched a new task force to galvanize this vision for this expanded research program. Before, the research program was very reactionary. It's whatever came in through the RFP process. And they wanted to say, how could we be a little more proactive and forward thinking so that we could align revenue to the research we wanted to fund? That group of volunteers and supporters essentially came together to make a plan of how they were going to create a research roadmap to fund that. And it was the same path as the strategic plan, a group of highly engaged peer volunteer members coming together over multiple months to create that new vision of the future that was exciting and that could get buy-in, and then take it to the board to get permission. And I'm excited to share that Aubrey and the team took it in December 2021 to their board, got permission in there, and right now in the fun stages of implementation. And so, Aubrey, knowing that you're out there right now communicating about the strategic plan and the research roadmap, raising funds for it, you're engaging your community in thoughtful conversations, what are you most excited about?
Well, I'm excited about a lot of things. I got to tell you, it's very exciting to, number one, have alignment and all be on the same page in terms of where do we want to be, how have we defined success, and really some guardrails for how we want to move forward and achieve that success. But I think more than that, what's really exciting to me is that we're able to tell a story of what the future looks like, where we want to be as an organization, and how the donor and the supporter can help us get there. We're able to really openly share where there are areas of unmet need. We've created a menu of research opportunities for supporters to invest in and fundraise around directly. And that's a very different story than invest in LCRF because we pick the best science. We can say these are specific areas of need that the scientists are saying if we fund in these areas, it will improve outcomes. It will create a better quality of life for people who are living with a diagnosis. And I think that that's kind of changed the paradigm in the way in which we're telling the story. And I think we'll continue to further solidify what those intentions look like around where we're investing dollars. We have plans to hire a chief scientific officer. We're actually recruiting one right now who can further build upon this roadmap and where are the needs in lung cancer research, so we can share those needs with those who care most about lung cancer and align the passions with, with those areas of unmet need. And, we've done a little bit of that already. I was just telling DJ before we started this call, we just in the, first couple of months of the year have already secured $1.25 million in brand new funding directly for research through a combination of peer-to-peer fundraising and major gifts. And it feels really good to be able to offer that level of opportunity to our community that they can then get invested in and say, I funded this specific research. I care about early detection and I funded a research project that was in the early detection space. I care about, helping to overcome resistance because my loved one is on a targeted therapy. And if this targeted therapy stops working, I want to know that there's another option available. And the dollars I'm investing are directly going towards that type of research. And so, it's been really exciting for a lot of different reasons, but mostly because you can really see our donors and supporters light up when their passions are, when they know they're investing in the work that is passionate to them. Or that they're passionate about. And I'm excited thinking about the future and how, as we continue to work with those donors and show the impact they're having, how I think DJ mentioned adding zeros onto those gifts. I think we really will see that. And, I think this strategic plan has really laid the groundwork for us and put us at a pivotal turning point where we are now really, I think, poised for great success.
I'll jump in here really quickly, DJ, before you go into this.
Please.
A question. Where would you start in terms of building that relationship with your board so that everyone is in agreement of next steps in a strategic plan?
That's a really good question. And I think, part of it is in the questions that you ask. I don't think you have to have the answers. And I don't think that there's a one size fits all. When we started this process, I started asking some board members, where do you see us going? Where do you see us? And then kind of daylighting that this is a little different than what this person is saying. And ultimately, we do want this same end in game, but the way we're talking about getting there is a little differently. And so I think, you have to be thoughtful in hearing what they say, what they think, and also how that matches up with the other key stakeholders that are in the room and also, have opinion and voice for the direction of the organization.
Yeah, it sounds kind of similar. Okay, this is a personal story. So my dad is an avid motorcyclist, and he's done all 50 states and several Canadian provinces. And having such a military background, he will plan every stop, how much gas it takes to get there, like very, very, very. But once he gets to the stopping point, he doesn't have a plan for what he's going to do when he's there. And I think some people might fall into that trap in the industry, right? Of we're so in the nuts and bolts of operationalizing the way that we don't have a high def vision for where we're going. I've got another friend who knows exactly what she's going to do as soon as she gets to London, but she really doesn't stress I'm going to fly on this day. She knows exactly what she wants to do. And I think it's very similar sounding, like the conversations that you're having, like, are we dreaming in high def of where we're going or how we're going to get there? And you've done a good job of ameliorating all of those differences and kind of pin cushioning it all together. Would that be fair?
I think it's totally fair. And something that, I thought of as you were saying this, I'm the lead of the strategic plan, right, on staff. And so I can quickly put a lot of pressure on myself to come up with what are all of the answers? How are we going to grow this organization? You know, I stay up at night, I'm journaling, trying to figure out what are all, before we went through this process, I probably tried to write a strategic plan, I don't know, 45 times, just, you know, off the cuff. And, you know, it doesn't actually matter so much what the plan says, so long as everyone is involved in the creation of the plan and can see the vision of where it is that you're going. And I really like that high def. I just got a big screen TV, 58 inchers. And so I can see the TV a whole lot better than when I was watching it on 37 inches. I told my dad the other day, like, I didn't know the basketball court was that big. But we can see the full court now, you know, we can see the full court. It's not fuzzy, and it does create a much clearer picture, not only of where we're headed, but the confidence that we need to get there.
And so, Aubrey, a couple quick questions. We've got about 5 minutes before we'll open it up for Q&A. Now that you've gone through this process, what's different 2 years from now that you've done this? And I'm not talking, you know, you're going to raise X number of dollars, but like what fundamentally is different about the organization and the volunteers within it?
Yeah, so what is different? You know, I think the way in which we as an organization partner with the board is going to be very different. I think we are clearly articulating and identifying our needs as an organization, and we're moving towards those needs as a group. I think we are also much more intentional about the conversations that we have with our scientific advisory board. We're currently in the process of creating a scientific executive committee. Prior to this process, our scientific advisory board was much more in a advisory review capacity, kind of saying this is good science. And, you know, I think we are now, the scientific advisory board chair is actually now tasking the SAB to think in a much more visionary way and where the needs exist. And so I think really asking ourselves, what do we need? And then how will we achieve that is happening at all levels. You know, it's happening first at the research level, then how does the board support that research? And, you know, I think it's pretty powerful to watch that transition. And I think we're going to be doing even more of that and be much more intentional about the process over the next couple of years.
And Aubrey, piggybacking on that, so what were the best parts of the 2021 journey that you did over that 12 months? And what do you think was the most critical pieces to your success?
So I think the best parts were that creating these task forces really allowed us to deepen engagement with some of our key supporters. You know, we invited them to the conversation. We recruited a board member through that process. We recruited our next board chair through that process. We really created, I think, a visionary and really got our scientific advisory board chair excited to lead us through this roadmap process. I think just the enthusiasm that these three women each have in and of itself is, you know, in my mind, makes the journey worthwhile. They're ready to really lead us through this process. And you know, we've also identified through the research task force potential scientific advisory board members and potential scientific executive committee members. And so I think that it brought people who are already close to us, it brought them closer and reignited their passion and their motivation to continue to move the mission forward. And, you know, I have said this throughout, but I think everyone really did feel heard throughout the process. And I think they could all see themselves and their piece that they were passionate about within the plan. Even though we all came from very different perspectives, all of those perspectives were addressed throughout the plan. And I think that was really critical in our success. And I have to say, the reason we were able to do that is really because we had Turnkey as the impartial party. And I don't mean that as a sales pitch in any stretch of the imagination. I mean that as we had someone there who was not biased. DJ didn't have an opinion throughout this process. And I think, he was able to take things through a much different filter than I was, as kind of the supporter and the facilitator through the process.
Thanks, Aubrey. We did not tear up on that, full disclosure. So thank you for the kind words there. So it wasn't all peaches, unicorn, and rainbows. If you could go back, what would you do differently?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I think with these task forces, we had a lot of meetings throughout the year, lots of meetings, big meetings. We did a lot of planning for those meetings. And sometimes, it's easy to get caught up in what will we do? What will the agenda be? How do we tee this up to be successful? I got to get all the other work done that's also on my plate. But I think having the in-between one-on-one meetings with the different stakeholders throughout to continue to get a pulse on their perspective and what they said at the last meeting, what's coming up, engaging them throughout is really critical. And there were times throughout the process we did that really well, and then the meetings went really well. And there were times throughout the process where we got caught up in planning for the meeting and thinking we had everything completely buttoned up, and then we'd go to the meeting and, that's when some things would come unearthed that we weren't really prepared for. And so, I think making sure that you're engaging people throughout is even more important than engaging them in the actual meetings when you're talking about the real work.
And last question, and then we'll turn it over to Q&A. What advice do you have for others who are looking to leverage strategic planning to kind of lift board members and their other VIP volunteers and their perception of what is possible?
I think you have to ask yourself really good questions, and you have to ask those around you some really good questions about what they think. And the best way to mobilize them is to engage them in the process. So, take the pressure, release the pressure from yourself, allow everyone to be a part of the solution. And, when volunteers become passionate about different areas, ask them to champion those sorts of things. I think, allow them the opportunity to really share their voice and their passion and convey the message so that that message becomes more peer-to-peer, not staff to peer, or staff to volunteer rather, sorry.
Well, thank you. So I'll turn it over to Kate for the Q&A part. Kate?
Okay, so my threat to everybody who doesn't send in a question: if you don't send in a question, I keep asking questions, and I know that
and I heard they're tough ones, so we need your questions.
I can't help myself. I just love it. So I'm here as a representative of, I have hundreds of conversations with other folks at different organizations at all levels, and I've heard two situations come up. I'm not saying this is you guys, but I'd love both of y'all's take on this. What would you recommend if going through this process and your board chair is about to be stepping down, or you don't have an active board that's really leaning in like yours was?
So I will say, so I mentioned that we were in the situation where our board chair was stepping down or looking to take a step down. And so we invited, a couple of different potential prospects to be a part of this process. And I think it was through the process that, our current board chair was able to self-identify that, I really would like to be, step into his position. So I think it's a real opportunity to, engage volunteers and really cultivate them. And I wouldn't say that we had a very vocal board. I wouldn't say it was highly engaged. In a lot of ways, people were looking to take a step back. And so, we did invite prospective board members to join in on the conversation on these task forces, knowing that we really needed to kind of evolve and change the future makeup of the board to identify leadership throughout. And so, I think you can get some of the other stakeholders that might not be sitting on the board to participate. We did. And then we were able to recruit one.
DJ, do you have anything you want to add to her take on that?
Yeah, one of the things that we know psychologically is people just want to be heard, even if their piece isn't adopted. And so what I really appreciated about what Lung Cancer Research Foundation did and a few other groups is they used this as a way to engage people and have some individuals rise up above what they would have previously done. And I think a strategic planning process spanning multiple months is a great way to do that, to engage some of your best, your brightest, get them, and then they can see their fingerprints on it and they're much more bought in. I can tell you, I interviewed each one of the board members and then the task force members. And that first meeting, a few of them were downright, how do I say this, aggressive and feeling as if this was going to be a waste of time, that they didn't need to do a strategic plan. And they already had something that they were working towards. And then when I asked them what it is, they would give me something that was completely different than somebody else's, but it was their own passion. And I would say that what I thought was really smart, as Aubrey pointed out earlier, is they used that, they funneled that passion into the project, and that allowed them to not only identify the next board chair, but have them own it so that now they're all running in the same direction. And so I thought it was a really smart way to engage. And so groups in transition, I say go forward, don't wait. Why waste the time? Move forward.
Awesome. When is the perfect time to do this? Or is there a bad time?
When is the perfect time to do this? I don't know if I have the answer, but I think don't wait. You know, it's really easy to be reactive in your work, and I think starting to move in that forward direction and that forward thinking, you can start planting seeds in terms of getting there. It does take time to get, you know, everyone on board. So, you know, I don't know that there's ever really a perfect time to do it, but now might be the time to start thinking about it.
Is there ever a bad time?
What'd you say, Kate?
So is there ever a bad time to do this?
I don't know, DJ. Do you
I would say the only time I would not recommend it is when the organization is going through a period of incredibly rapid changes. So for example, merger, right in the middle of a merger is probably not the best time to do it because you don't understand the full pieces that are fitting together. But you want to do it fast enough after a merger or after major organizational changes so that you don't sit around and get into a rut and everyone's pointing at each other, what the heck are we doing here? So there is a sweet spot, like if an organization, for example, is significantly, you know, going through massive changes like a merger, but 90% of the time, I'd say that it's probably the right time if you're looking to get a direction and a strategy in place.
It just, as you were saying that, of everybody just looking at each other, I pictured the Spider-Man meme when they're all the different Spider-Man are looking at each other pointing. That's what it could feel like sometimes. So again, a lot of questions that I have or challenges that I hear from people out in the space is like, okay, well, we did a huge strategic plan and then it didn't change anything. So Aubrey, what are some things that you're going to be doing to help make sure you guys stay in alignment with your strategic plan and putting it into place in day-to-day ways?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And actually one of my colleagues had been through the process a few times with strategic planning at a different organization. And, you know, I think enjoyed the process. It was a big rah-rah, everyone was excited. And then, you know, the strategic plan goes and sits on the shelf, collects the dust. And it was just a memory of, remember when that person came in and we did this strategic plan? And I think when we started this process, we were all very clear about this is not just a team building exercise. This is not just kumbaya. We are making a commitment as a team to, you know, ensure there are ways to bring light to the strategic plan, reflect on what we thought would be, assess it, and identify if we need to adjust strategy and adjust the plan overall. We've created a dashboard report that's kind of green, yellow, red that highlights how are we doing, not from a financial perspective, but from a specific objective perspective. How are we rating ourselves right now? And if anything is yellow or red, meaning I'm just assuming everyone knows that green is good, yellow is middle of the road, and red is like big red flag. But really trying to understand, okay, we're not hitting the mark right here. And what do we need? what is it that we need to be focused on, and really kind of dialing in one or two things, not the full kit and caboodle of everything we could ever possibly be doing, but the things that will create the most lasting impact. And I was telling DJ earlier, as we were going through the process, we created this really large master matrix of year 1, year 2, year 3. Here's all the things that we need to do. And we're kind of joking that whenever I mention matrix now, people are like, oh, kind of grumble. No one wants to talk about that level of detail. And so what we did is we kind of I pulled out some of the biggest objectives from within the matrix, the action items that needed to happen. And we asked ourselves in 2022, if we do nothing else, what do we need to make sure as a team we really commit to and accomplish this year? And as we look at our strategic plan, we have about 5 kind of core strategies, and each one of those has 2 or 3 action items that we need to make sure that we're doing, and we're communicating those openly and often with the board, and also doing kind of a green, yellow, red assessment of each one of those at each of the board meetings. And as a team, we have also, not just a senior team, the development and communications team as well has also adopted kind of performance objectives as a team. And so those performance objectives are not only tied to the strategic plan, but they're tied to the success of the group and the whole, and our success as an organization, not as an individual, and weighted more than 50% of their performance is gauged on if the organization does well, which is really kind of creating more synergy. And as some of our team leads are talking about, their department goals, there's much more collaboration, there's much more synergy, there's much more vision and line of sight into where the organization is headed. And I think that that's really creating more buy-in, but also more momentum, and keeping that strategic plan in front of us all year long.
Gotcha, thank you. I can say we also experienced the same thing personally at Turnkey. We did a strategic plan process, and we actually, we do this for clients as well, help stand up a dashboard for that. So LCRF has their own, but we can also help with standing one up. We have done that for other clients. And I think it's really important for the transparency piece to see where because you get so head down sometimes in meeting your own KPIs and meeting your own goals, that sometimes you can't see what's happening, the really amazing things happening in this other department over there. So that's something that we use personally as well, as we recommend to our clients for the dashboarding purposes. So I love that you guys do that too. All right, so another question that came in is, was a community needs assessment a part of this process?
Aubrey, do you want me to answer, or would you like
to? Go ahead, DJ.
Okay.
I think you'll be more robust in your response.
And so the danger with the words community needs assessment is it means something different in every organization I've been a part of. What we did on the strategic planning was we interviewed members of the staff at all levels of the national office as well as at the local level. We interviewed some VIPs and some volunteers who were either really involved or really excited about the mission. We also did some surveys for staff and volunteers as well as some others, so that we were trying to get as much information as we could. And then we did a similar, slightly different process on the research side. We actually went out and surveyed about a dozen leading nonprofits who have kick-ass research programs. And we just got on the phone with the CEO, and they were willing to give us time. And we had Aubrey and Dennis, their CEO, and some others just sat on the phone and asked questions and listened and had them share their journeys. And we pillaged, and stole what we liked while we were still interviewing and talking with staff and other volunteers to really get their feedback. And so it was a customized, quote unquote, community needs assessment for each one. But I would say between the two of them, we probably did around 50 interviews, a couple surveys, and then we interviewed other groups that were really doing good things that we wanted to steal from. And Aubrey, what did I miss?
I would just add, I think that the interviews we did with the research task force, interviewing other organizations, I mean, we could have probably come up with what we did, but we did not have to work so hard. We went to those that are already doing this and said, what works really well? We want our research program to work really well. Yours works really well. How'd you do it? And they kind of gave us some of the secret sauce. There's nothing out there that's earth-shattering, but I think it also, that having that case study built more confidence into the volunteers as we were building this process. And they said, you know, JDRF has done this before, the Pancreatic Lung Cancer Association or Pancreatic Cancer has done this before. Okay, this is how they raised millions of dollars for their cause. We feel much more confident, much more comfortable in our ability to do the same.
What I also liked is the volunteers said that we don't want to do that part of it, but we like this piece over here. We're going to take that whole hog. And so it was fascinating, the process.
Awesome. All right, next one. How long after significant leadership changes would you recommend waiting for things to settle before beginning something like this?
Well, I'll give you my personal opinion. It might be different from yours, DJ, but I think, you know, with significant leadership changes, I guess I was thinking staff-wise. So we've had a couple of different CEOs since I've been here. There's been a transition since Dennis Chillemi came on board as our CEO. And I think it's important for the CEO to really be able to, or whoever's leading the strategic plan, to have a good sense of where we are. I think that takes about 18 months to really be able to talk with enough constituents and volunteers and really have a good understanding for the mission and the programs and what's been done in the past to create some vision. Maybe others can do it more quickly than that. In terms of the volunteer leadership transition, you know, I kind of think doing that at the very, if you're able to do it as you have a new board chair, I think that's the right way, the best way to get the relationship started off on the right foot. I think, you know, the board chair wants to be successful. They want to make sure that they are leading the organization to accomplish all that they've set out. And without having a plan or knowing what it is that we need to accomplish, it doesn't necessarily seem like you're setting that board chair up to be so successful when we haven't even defined what success is yet. So I would try and do it pretty early on if you have change in board leadership.
Agree with everything Aubrey said. And the one caveat I would say is that if your organization had a leadership change due to either poor performance or a scandal, or there's, you know, disarray at the board and they're just not happy with the way things are going, this can help remedy that. And I would urge you to do that in the first 90 days of the new leadership coming on. You know, with Lung Cancer Research Foundation, they had a talented senior team in communications and a CFO and a fundraising side and an incredible CEO. And they were looking to marry that up with the volunteers. However, if there's dysfunction there and you had a staff turnover because of dysfunction, I would urge you sooner rather than later, so that you could use this as a chance to accelerate those changes and put the needed changes in place faster with the board engaged, so that you're not, you know, going 12 or 18 months with the board going, when are you going to fix this? They're seeing the solutions getting rolled out immediately. So for anyone who has that problem, I'd recommend now. If it's and everything else Aubrey said, I agree completely with.
Yes. All right. And another one, during the planning period, Aubrey, you mentioned there were changes to include new board members. What were the challenges when onboarding the new members to bring them up to speed with the rest of the board?
Yeah. So what were the challenges? We had zero onboarding process, not one formalized process for onboarding, not even a process for what recruitment looks like or how to actually vote someone onto the board. It'd been quite a while since we had done that. And so really thinking about, okay, who does this prospective board member need to talk to? You know, part of our strategic plan, one of the core areas is around leadership, and formalizing our onboarding processes was one of our longer term objectives. I think we now have a board packet and, you know, very specifics in terms of who do prospects need to speak with in order to determine if they should become a member of the board or not. And then of course goes to a formalized vote. But I think that those processes will continue, evolve, and change over time, and we will have, you know, a much more robust onboarding training process. I think, you know, we really needed to, having come from a larger organization where things were a little more tidied up. You know, I often think, oh my gosh, we need to do all of these things, and I put a lot of pressure to, you know, do it the exact way that everything should be done. But I think kind of meeting your organization where you're at and putting a few steps in place, a few key pieces is probably the direction to go. Otherwise, it can become very overwhelming. So I would meet the organization where you're at and what's one or two things that will move us forward and set us up to be more successful than we were before without being perfect.
All righty. I think that was all of the current questions that we have. I will go ahead and wrap us up, but I just want to say this is like sneaky stuff. It's so simple, right? But it's hard to do in real life for your organization, especially when you have the other 10 million hats that you're wearing. So please know that we're here for you, and Aubrey as well, of course. Thank you for attending today. If we weren't able to answer your question in the way you were looking for us to, or you didn't want to put your question in, don't hesitate to reach out afterwards, and we can brainstorm with you in regards to your specific situation and organization to come up with a meaningful strategy. We would love to have a conversation with you. So thank you all so much for joining today. The recording will be sent out in the next week, and reach out at any time if you have questions. Thank you so much. Thank you, DJ and Aubrey.
Thank you, Kate.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.